When it comes to the climate crisis, so much content features facts and figures and percentages, but are those really the conversations that are happening in living rooms throughout the world? As we struggle to navigate an increasingly ambiguous future, what are the interesting interpersonal conundrums and social fireworks that are going off under our very noses? Now, I like to try and be very serious sometimes. It'll have you know, I have a series on my channel called Positive Panic where I talk more about the practical application of the stuff we do know about the climate crisis and also try to make it fun. But here's another thing about me. I'm a massive gossip. I love it. I just want to know, can you be a fan of multiple parts of ethically ambiguous reality TV and Greta Thunberg? Apparently so. She sits here. So of course today I had to use the Am I the Asshole Reddit thread to find some of the climate related conundrums people are coming up against and see if we can make some sense of it in this world, or at least get a little bit of goss. Ethical gossip. Is it possible? Comment below. First one, am I the asshole for participating in rallies against climate change but flying to Canada for an exchange semester? I live in Switzerland and in theory I could go to France or the French part of Switzerland if I wanted to learn a language, but I don't. I want to live across the pond to see what it's like to live there. The times I've flown in my life can be counted on one hand. I separate my trash, my parents build a house that does not use fossil fuels because of good insulation and solar panels. I rarely buy myself new stuff, but when I mentioned going to Canada, 3 people in my class asked me how I could fly for an exchange program but go on a climate strike. And I don't know the answer. Am I the asshole? Does anybody mind if I knit? I knit when I'm stressed. Is that okay? Knitting in public is truly the Anthropocene's version of smoking in public. Does anybody mind? So personally, as somebody who's been researching the climate quite a bit and reading popular books, but ultimately isn't qualified, is but a mere pawn, a civilian in this system and just trying to emotionally make sense of it. I feel like the knowledge of personal responsibility is really key and vital, like a way in for people to understand like the bigger problems that are happening. And I do think it's really good to be conscious of it. However, after reading about all the hidden problems with the aviation industry, see ghost flights, see the majority of commercial flight damages being done by frequent flyers, I have come to realise that what we really need to stop doing is flying casually. Flying short distances domestically, like especially if you live in Britain, like what's going on with that? If you're flying from Glasgow to London, get a grip. But I really don't think the focus should be on individuals giving up really big, important life experiences, whilst big airlines are just allowed to fly empty planes through the sky for no apparent reason. I unpack this more in my Lies You're Told About Travel video, and it's something that I'll definitely continue to think about. I fly very occasionally now, and only for big, meaningful experiences that I know are going to be really, really important to me. I don't just fly to go and lie in the sun. So for this one, I'm gonna say, not the asshole. Am I the asshole for bringing eggs to a vegan wedding? Immediately on reading this title, I was like, obviously you are. But after I read it, it's quite long, but I'll summarise it for you. The person attending the wedding has multiple allergies: peanuts, soy, sesame, and mild shellfish allergies. They're really, really serious. It's landed them in hospital several times because of cross-contamination. And after asking his brother, whose wedding it is, if there would be anything safe for them to eat at the wedding, he said they're using a local neighbourhood ladies business as the catering service and they couldn't guarantee that things that she ate wouldn't be contaminated. The wedding day arrives and it comes time to eat. Everyone is digging into the food and I pull out my Tupperware quite happily and dig in to see the bride staring at me with horror on her face. I'd bought the homemade sort of salad box which had 2 eggs on top, and she literally stared at me in disgust. After the meal had finished, she pulled me aside to say I'd ruined her meal and her appetite and ruined her day. And I'm clearly a selfish person because I can't even go one meal without animal secretions at a vegan wedding. She points out it's not like she bought a steak. Am I the asshole? Now, look, I get that wedding days are important for people. I get that you want it to be as too much to your tastes and to reflect your beliefs as possible. But I think this is the perfect kind of emblematic example of the difference between like what I think weddings originally were and what commercialism has turned them into. And I say this as somebody who's vegetarian and aspiring vegan and trying to work out what the hell is going on with the climate crisis. I think that individualism is one of the problems that creates consumerism and feeds into the very attitudes that damage the environment, like meat eating. What do I mean by that? I mean that a default meat and dairy and I don't care diet is part of the thought process we've been conditioned to think, which is like, well, I like it, so why should I care about the effect it has on anyone else? Now, the irony of a vegan acting like this is because they've bought into the other parts of the individualism that they despise in the context of food, which is considering your effects on other people's lives, considering that you are part of a community rather than an individual person that deserves to be worshipped on their wedding day. Yes, on your wedding day, you're asking for care and you're asking for attention and you're asking for love, but you're not asking for subservience or complete obedience. That would be a little bit wacky, no? So I do think this idea of creating a space where you ask for respect from people, especially when it's your thing that you're inviting them into, but you can't ask for somebody's respect at the consequence of their own health. These kind of situations where people can't be vegan are very, very rare to my knowledge, and I think that people talk about them like they're more common than they are, but they do exist, and for that reason, until food innovation reaches a better place, some people will need to eat eggs. That doesn't mean that the rest of us who don't have to eat eggs should eat eggs. Still occasionally eat eggs over here, by the way. Massive hypocrite. But yeah, if you want somebody to spend the money and come to your wedding, you should accommodate for at least their basic needs, like being able to go to the toilet and being able to eat. The idea that somebody eating something that you don't agree with can ruin your wedding day is a very worrying, flashing lights red arrow pointing to the fact that you might not actually really understand what weddings are about. Anyway, not the asshole. I'm still searching for an asshole here. Okay. Am I the asshole for turning my niece vegan? My brother-in-law and my sister-in-law recently asked my husband and I if we could watch their 7-year-old daughter for a few weeks. We said yes, and my niece came to stay with us. I've been a vegan for over 10 years and was vegetarian for several years before that. Everyone in my family knows this. I cook vegan at home. My husband will sometimes add his own meat or dairy to vegan meals I provide. And I did get some meat-based convenience food for my niece, like chicken nuggets. After a few days of living with us and helping me prepare meals, my niece asked me questions about why I don't cook real meat. I explained that I don't eat animals. She kept asking questions about it, lots of whys. And I explained to her that, do you think your dog Dexter has feelings? Does he get happy or sad? Would he be scared if somebody tried to kill him? Would you want to eat him? And then I continued, I believe that cows and pigs and chickens have feelings just like Dexter, so I don't want to eat them either. After that conversation, my niece promptly declared she didn't want to eat meat ever again. When my sister-in-law came and picked my niece up, we chatted about it a bit and I mentioned my niece had stopped eating meat while she was here. The next day, my brother-in-law called my husband and was absolutely furious about it. They've been screeching about me to everyone in the family, telling them that it was really fucked up for me to turn my niece vegan. My husband is pissed at me because now he and his brother are fighting. I don't think I did anything wrong. I was honest and age appropriate. I offered the kid animal products. She said she didn't want them. Am I the asshole? Absolutely not. I think when people react in this really big, emotional, angry way to other people stopping eating meat, I have a feeling that the emotion comes from a place of like already knowing or slight guilt or something else, because I see this a lot. I see a lot of really disproportionate emotional responses to something that is ultimately a personal choice. It also speaks to like the kind of divergence I think I would have with these people about like what a parent is. A parent isn't somebody who dictates the life choices of a child until the age of 18. A parent is somebody who supports a child in making their own decisions, especially moral ones, and supporting them in it. So I would say, let's keep tabs on that parent-child relationship because it sounds like it could potentially turn abusive. And also the idea that another adult explaining something true to your child, like believing that's indoctrination, but not thinking that what you tell them is also in a form of indoctrination, like blind belief of a parent's opinions, especially if they're not backed up by anything. It's very weird. Very weird. Dexter being the ultimate gateway knowledge for this kid, and I love that because again the science supports that pigs and chickens have exactly the same kind of emotions and intelligence as dogs. The only reason we care about dogs more because it's traditionally part of our lives, they're part of our homes. But my thinking on that has really changed over the years. Like it's really, I don't even want to go into the other arguments with people. Like if somebody's a dog owner and they ask me why I'm vegetarian and trying to be vegan, I'm not really interested in going into all the other like debates about industry and food production and all of that. I just go, well, I don't want to eat your dog. It's the same thing. I don't have to know and love a human to not want to kill them, and I don't have to know and love an animal to not want to eat them. It's so straightforward to me now, and I appreciate that it's not like that for everybody, and it definitely wasn't like that for me in the past. I used to be like, I'd eat anything, I'd kill a pig with my bare hands. I don't know what I was talking about. I was certainly talking a big game, but no, you're not the asshole at all. 7 was when I definitely started feeling uncomfortable about meat for a while, and then managed to desensitize myself to it somehow. I want to do this one. Am I the asshole for stealing my roommate's snacks and replacing them with vegan snacks? I shouldn't laugh, because I actually feel like I know my opinion on this. So I, female 19, live with a couple of roommates, and one of them, male 21, developed a big snacking problem. It all started when I brought up how I decided to become vegan and how much more confident I feel in myself. I asked him if he would also consider going vegan to live a little better lifestyle. He promptly shut me down and told me I sounded like a TV commercial. After that conversation, I guessed he had decided to try and spite me by finding snacks and treats from stores and eating them obnoxiously loud. Not only is it nasty, but it's also starting to affect his health. I really didn't want him to become obese, and I was driven so far up the wall that I eventually decided to take matters into my own hands. So I came up with a plan to steal his snacks and replace them with healthier options like food and veggies. I thought he'd appreciate the gesture, or at least have a laugh, but he's surprisingly upset about it. I, of course, sold the snacks so he could stop practically poisoning me with his snacking, but he got really mad when I told him that. My friends have labelled me the snack thief among my group. Am I wrong? Well, one, you're kind of fat shaming. I think that it's hard when you read, like you first read about veganism and stuff, because there are some health benefits as well. I really don't think that that's the point. And one of my favourite groups I'm on in Facebook is called What Fat Vegans Eat, in that like you can eat really unhealthily and be vegan, and it sounds like fun. And they really look like they're having a lot of fun in that group. There's some delicious stuff. So I think the temptation to, instead of like learning about how industries can lie to us and how like everything isn't as it seems when it comes to like food production and what we've learned about what we need to stay alive as humans, is like it could be wrong. That's the takeaway I get from learning about all of the different kinds of food production. But I think some people take away from it, oh, I can learn about how other people eat, and then I get to scold them on it and tell them off about it and be mildly fat phobic and judge what their health might be. So I think, yes, you're the asshole literally just for that comment. Also, obviously you've never tried to change anybody's minds, but you don't do it by stealing from them, especially snacks. This is the kind of thing that if I had been thinking about being a vegetarian when I was a meat eater, you would have delayed it by about 10 years with that one action. Just out of spite, to be honest. Am I petty and immature? Yes, but it seems like this man is too. So yeah, I think for me, the way that I gave up meat was having friends that were vegan, that were open. I actually like talked to one of my friends and I was like, hey, like I know we're doing this thing, but after this, do you mind if I just sit you down and I ask you some questions that I have about veganism, because I don't understand like how you eat, and I just have all these really random questions. Do you have like room in your brain for that at some point today? And she was like, sure. And I asked her all the questions I could think of that I had around how she ate with her consent. And then it took me literally another like 12 months of processing before I went and did it myself, but it feels kind of permanent now, not eating meat to me. And if that had felt like not my choice and somebody else's choice, or something that I felt pressured or shamed into doing, it wouldn't have lasted long at all, I can tell you that. I'm not proud of how human psyche works, but from what I can tell, that's how it works across the board. Thank you for entertaining me though with the post. I think we've got time for one more. Am I the asshole for bringing up a politically sensitive topic with my co-worker? I work remote, so I hadn't met any of my co-workers since I was hired during the pandemic. Last month, I went to Denver to meet them for a team get-together. It was really fun and we all went to a bar after work. Most of my co-workers are from Texas and I'm from BC, Canada. I was struggling with the weather and complained it was too hot. My co-worker agreed but said it was way hotter in Texas, and I said I was happy the team get-together wasn't in Texas because I would melt. He laughed and asked if BC, Canada was hot. I said it used to be really nice, but it's been getting hotter recently, especially last year. He seemed interested and he didn't think Canada could even get very hot because it was so far north. Not that far north. I said due to climate change it got up to about 50 degrees last year. He got really quiet, and a few co-workers who were listening, their faces changed. I was like, what? Not really sure why everyone was acting strange. The co-worker said, well, climate change isn't real, so I'm not sure what's causing Canada to get so hot, but this isn't it. I was pretty shocked because I'd never heard anyone deny climate change. I tried to shrug it off, not wanting to cause any issues in the company meeting. Then last week I got religious and politically sensitive training from HR, and when I asked about it, they clarified it was due to me mentioning politically sensitive topics like climate change at our meetup. I think it's insane that I've worked in multiple offices, including very conservative environments in Canada, and never has anyone had any issue with me mentioning climate change. But I've never worked with US co-workers for a US company before, so am I the asshole for mentioning a politically sensitive topic? I think this is an obvious no. I would love to hear if you are from the US or live in the US, like whether this is something that represents what goes on where you live, because that is interesting. That makes me feel slightly wobbly. But I would like to take it in a more serious direction, in that I think that it's really important to be really casually upfront about things that are a landslide majority scientific consensus. I don't know if I always achieve it in the most slick way, but I do try and just be more casual about mentioning like climate crisis related things in conversation, just asides, like trying not to come across too intense, just like it sounds like this poster was trying to be, like not too intense about it, not too like, oh, this is something that you're doing wrong, this is your problem, just being like, hey, that's going on in the world. I feel like kind of like with the vegan bride, weirdly, there is this idea that you get to live in isolation, and if other people bring their circumstances or their needs or their knowledge into a space, it becomes politically sensitive. I always feel like with the whole like don't bring up politics, don't bring up stuff, like don't bring up religion and money at the dinner table, it's kind of wild to me that people think that politics and climate, or as I like to call it, the floor, the thing that we're standing on, that could not be here. That discussions about like whether the world continues is a political like side project, like a hobby that some people want to talk about. And I think as well, like that bothers me a little bit, that I sometimes feel like people see me doing climate content. I've got to put down my knitting for this, I'm feeling too much about it. People see me doing climate content and they think, that's a nice hobby for Lena. Obviously she got into that because she loves animals and she loves the environment, and that's like her thing. Which first I'd like to say, firstly, I don't even like animals. It's not true, but I'm not a really big pet person. I don't have a pet. I'm not somebody who really likes looking at cat pictures or puppy pictures. It's just not my like one number. I wouldn't mind it if somebody handed me a kitten, but I'd gladly give it back quite fast. And when it comes to the environment as well, I'm not really that outdoorsy. I'm not somebody who's like, I just want to be conserving things. That's not an interest of mine, or it wasn't until I understood the scale of things and the threat it would have to literally everything that I like books. I literally have a whole podcast called No Books on a Dead Planet because that's what scares me. And I think when we treat environmental actions as something that people are doing because of their interests, or like on the side as like a wacky political opinion that they shouldn't bring up at work, we completely negate everything we know about the crisis. You're instantly invalidating how big and how ultimately scary things could get. And I say that because the world is going to change drastically in the next 20, 30, 40 years. I know that, but it could change either way. It could change unrecognizably to be better, or it could change in the other direction that we're going to think about at Halloween. But ultimately, I don't want to be like, if I had my own way, I wouldn't be making climate crisis videos for fun, although I've made it fun. It feels fun to me now. I like it. It's in line with everything I'm worrying about, which ultimately, where does art come from if not from worrying? But if it was up to me, I'd just be making random video essays, unpacking Wicked the musical, and doing hauls of fashion without any need to think about where it came from or anything like that. When I think people are like, oh, but this is what I like to do, this is how I like to work, I'd like a workplace that doesn't mention the environment because it makes me uncomfortable. I would do some environmental work, but I actually just really prefer these things instead. These are the things that I like to do. This is the way I want the world to be, and therefore I'll just keep acting in that way. That is a sign of insanity, in my opinion. To believe you can live in a vacuum without any consideration for the environment or the facts or the circumstances around you is a form of insanity. We can't be doing that. So I think that maybe the person who said this to this poster should go on a denying sensitive issues workplace thing, because I think, is that not one of the big problems with many workplaces is that they deny sensitive issues. Right, why should the problem be somebody bringing them up? The people who should get disciplined are the ones who are trying to push them down. My main takeaway from this exercise isn't that I just want to go around calling people assholes or gossiping, although part of it does sound fun. My real takeaway is more that we really need to be gentle with ourselves when it comes to navigating conversations about the climate. It's not straightforward. We barely have anybody modeling how to navigate it, and it's going to require a rethink of a lot of the mindsets we've all been taught to have. So being gentle with each other, navigating things together, and trying to be on the same team will ultimately, hopefully, ensure that none of us are the assholes. Thank you so much for watching this video. We found a few assholes today, but not many. Many people weren't the asshole. If you think that I'm the asshole, you can comment below, because it's all engagement, frankly, and I'm always willing to change my mind about things. Thank you so much for watching this video. It was made possible by the Gumption Club, who tip me per video to make sure these videos keep happening, and they don't have to have a weird sponsor at the end trying to sell you something that you really don't want, and neither does the planet. Frog Snog, out.